And Awami League had a very bad record in the last few years, right? I mean, they did win the elections fair and square twice in 1991 and then in 2008. But the elections after that,
they cannot do anything because they don't have any connection with the people. They are all rich people. They are all educated people. They are all like Nobel laureate. They cannot do anything for the common people of any country in the whole world.
That the two ministries which are doing well are the ones that are run by students. I would imagine that Rizwana would do a very good job if she's only working on environment.
Salil, thank you so much for making time for this forum. I'm an old fan. I loved your book, The Colonel Who Would Not Speak. I thought it should be made into a film. I don't know why it hasn't been made into a film yet. Hope one day it will be. I read your latest column in the Jerusalem Star Tribune, I believe it's called. And you hit all the key points. The final sentence that you write, and which I think is the key, that it is time for India to tone down its rhetoric about Bangladesh going Islamic. So my question to you, the key as far as Bangladesh is concerned, the key reason why we see this rising temperature is the presence of Sheikh Hasina in India. And India allowing Sheikh Hasina to continue as a rallying cry. Why the Indian media has gone gung-ho against Bangladesh? What does it benefit from it? Why? This TV station called Bangla Republican has gone completely crazy. They're talking about creating a Christian state between Bangladesh and Burma. Where does this conspiracy theory come from? I thought India has attained some standard, but this is beyond anybody's imagination. Could you explain, please?
So let's talk about. I mean, thank you for having me, and I mean, I'm very grateful to be invited to this forum, and thank you for your very kind words about my book, 𝐎𝐮𝐫. India would be in a very difficult position about sending Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh, because it has a very strong relationship with her personally. Mr. Modi has a very strong relationship with her personally. And if he were to do anything that would do that, it would show him as a weak man within India. And Indian foreign policy today is entirely governed by one aim, which is to show that Modi is a strong man. Mm-hmm. And that explains both the first and the second part of your question, which is, about why is Indian media behaving the way it is. Because the Indian media, with the sole exception of a few web-based entities like Scroll and Wire and News Laundry and Khabar Lahariya, most of the Indian media is completely under the control of the government. And it's not as if they've been taken over by the government. It's just that they have chosen to be that. And therefore, I mean, I was seeing this morning a program where NDTV had a program where they were haranguing and really giving a very hard time to a Bangladeshi journalist who was trying to explain what was going on in Bangladesh. So there's a complete failure and complete lack of awareness and lack of understanding of what Bangladesh is all about. Too many Indians think that Bangladesh is another Pakistan. That is one of the problems. Yeah? So they see it as Pakistan on the east. They refuse to accept that Bangladesh is both Bengali and Muslim. And Bengali in its syncretic sense, where you have Muslim people who would put on the bindi and wear saris, and they would have they would celebrate pujo. I mean, it's something that is completely not understood or accepted and so any isolated incident, and I'm not saying that there are only a few of them, there are quite a few incidents of Hindus being attacked in Bangladesh, and that's terrible, but they will see that as affirming their own idea that Hindus are not safe in Bangladesh, because it plays to their own sense of insecurity within India. And it's exactly the politics that the BJP wants to promote in India. And I think that's at the heart of the problem, that because the BJP sees Bangladesh as another Pakistan, it wants to continue the same game, it wants to continue to play the same game, and it has accepted all these rules, all these bizarre ideas that, this government is imposed by Biden and that Yunus is a Hillary Clinton supporter and all the rest. And it's very, very sad because all the great relationships that India and Bangladesh had created with each other in 1971, it's now completely getting torn apart.
So can I ask one more question before I let others jump in? In your article, you speak quite correctly that India is friendless in the region. Nobody is friendly. Now, looking back at India's history, I'm thinking of 𝐒𝐲 𝐒𝐬𝐬, for example. The one man, perhaps the only time India extended his hands to its neighbors for friendship. Is there any chance, had Shashi Tharoor been your foreign minister, things would have been different, I'm quite sure. But he is not, and he will not be. But is there any chance that good sense will prevail in Indian foreign policy making bodies?
Well, it ought to, because, it's in India's interest to have good relations with Bangladesh, because India has no relations with Pakistan, bad relations with China. It has messed up its relations with Sri Lanka. It's not on good terms with Nepal or Bhutan at the moment. And Bangladesh was one trusted ally, which it has now completely lost. So you can try to pretend that, you're going to catapult yourself out of this region and become a major regional power. But if nobody in the region is going to respect you or support you, you can't really play that role elsewhere. And if your economy is still, if you're still an extremely polluted country and if you have still problems including inflation and so on, you're not going to be taken seriously as a global power.
Thank you so much. So as you mentioned about the relation is worst now, and I also mentioned that because of the BJP. So do you think the relation become worse now because of BJP's political agenda or because of Bangladesh rules or anybody's rule?
Yeah, no, I've not been back in India for quite a while now, so I can't speak with great authority here. But it seems to me that India and its foreign policy profile is pretty much run by the way it will play out within the country and not necessarily with national interest. So everything that the government does, whether anything that the foreign minister says, is driven by how it will play out on social media and within the country itself. It is not done with greater, longer-term interests of India at heart, because there are lots of things India can do which are far more sensible, and it's not doing because it wants to make sure that within India itself, it will continue to win elections. And in order to continue to win elections, it has to portray itself as a very pro-Hindu, very dominant, very aggressive, sometimes arrogant power, which is going to throw its weight around because of the assumption that India is now a superpower. And I think that is driving India the way it has been acting so far.
Another question I have, which is you mentioned earlier that the India is claiming superpower in that region, but if you think about all the neighbors, China, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, even now Bangladesh, Pakistan, there is all the neighbors, they have the better relation with India. What is the reason of it?
I think the reason is that, a lot of the countries, Maldives, Bangladesh and Pakistan certainly are Muslim countries. To that extent, so is Afghanistan. You know that India has changed its profile on refugees. India was extremely generous to Bangladeshi refugees in 1971, and something like 1 crore came to India at that time, and they were let in, and out of the 1 crore, about 95 lakh actually went back at the end of the war by April. So India was very generous to refugees, and India hasn't signed the Refugee Convention. If you look at the international law, India hasn't, but India obeyed it, and to the extent that there were Afghan refugees in India, Sri Lankan Tamils in India, Burmese refugees in India, and Tibetan refugees in India, and Bangladeshi refugees in India at the right time. But now India has changed the law, and the Indian law is that if you want to come to India as a refugee from the neighboring countries, you can only come if you're a religious minority, which means from Bangladesh, if you're a Hindu, Parsi, Jain, Buddhist, or Sikh, you're welcome. But if you're a Muslim, you cannot come. Now, all of you know as well as I do, and I knew Zulfaz Banan very well in Bangladesh. You know, if you're a gay Bangladeshi, or if you're a communist Bangladeshi, or if you're a Shia in Pakistan, or if you are a leftist, you are vulnerable. You may be a Muslim by birth, but it doesn't mean you are safe. But India is no longer a safe haven for you. And that violates the international law of non-refoulement. I don't know how many of you are lawyers in this group here, but non-refoulement essentially means that you do not send back a person to the old country if you're likely to be persecuted. But India will not accept them. So India has completely changed its profile essentially for domestic political reasons. And because of that, it is now in a situation where it is in a very precarious situation where it basically is going to run its entire foreign policy for domestic purposes and not for foreign purposes.
They prefer the bilateral relation than the personal relation. They are preferring the personal relation than bilateral relation. What is the reason?
No, I think that the reason is very clear that, you know, they want to be the major superpower in the region. And because they want to be the major superpower in the region, they were very happy with the arrangement they had with Hasina. And Hasina had very good relationship even with Manmohan Singh earlier. It's not as if it was only with the current government, with Mr. Modi. You know, when Paresh Barua and others, people from Assam were in Bangladesh, she was very willing to collaborate with the Indian government. She was willing to give the corridor. She was willing to make sure that people that Indians considered as terrorists who were in Bangladesh would be sent back to India at the right time when India demanded their presence. And therefore the treaty of extradition was signed, and which is exactly the problem today now for her, because if Principal Chief Advisor Yunus wants to call her back under the extradition treaty, India will have to obey by that. And that's going to be the big challenge for India, whether to abide by the treaty, which was signed once by the Indian government. So it's like, you know, there's a phrase in Sanskrit, Trishanku position. That's what they are caught in just now. And there is not an easy way out for India at all.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Selim Samad. Selim Bhai.
Yes, good evening. But I am not sure what is your question.
Okay.
আপনি প্রশ্ন করুন
আপনি প্রশ্ন করুন, if you have any question to
আপনি ঢাকায় বসে আছেন, ঢাকা থেকে আপনি প্রশ্ন করুন।
আচ্ছা, প্রথম কথা হলো যে মানে আই এম রিয়েলি ওনার বই আমি পড়েছি, খুব মনোযোগ দিয়ে পড়েছি। আমি নরমালি
ইংরেজিতে বলুন, ইংরেজিতে বলুন।
I have
আমি বুঝতে পারি কিন্তু আমার বাংলা বেশ ভালো নয়। আমি বুঝতে পারি।
Okay, that's fine.
আপনি বলেন, আপনি slowly বলেন।
Okay, no, it's okay. I can definitely speak because I have to appear at all the television.
আমি গুজরাটি আছি, আমি বাংলা নয়। আমার নাম শলির নাম গুজরাটি আছে, শলির নাম বাংলা আছে, কিন্তু আমি গুজরাটি আছি।
I have all praise for the Gujarati. I have never found a Gujarati who is poor. That's not the question. The question is that
they're all Patels, unfortunately, not Tripathi.
All Gujaratis are
Patels.
Okay. I mean, they are all over the world.
My favorite Gujarati is Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay. Unfortunately, there were many who were born in Gujarat. That is not an issue. The issue is that I have been appearing on the Indian television for the since 5th of August, and in after maybe on the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, in fact, the Indian media, I mean, as everybody, Hassan Fardosh just mentioned, it exploded, and they become so much anti-Bangladesh, so much, their conspiracy theories were so strong that yes, they have not only they have mentioned, they have repeated that, I mean, even NDTV, where I was appeared for several times, they always had said that Bangladesh is taken over by the military and Yunus is just a facade. I mean, he's
That's
just
true.
a portrait.
Yeah.
Yes, a portrait. A portrait means he has to use a portrait, so they use him as a portrait, as a photograph. So that's why he doesn't speak, he doesn't talk, he doesn't meet people, and he's nowhere, and he's not seen on the anywhere. That is what even yesterday. And another last thing is that they have time and again had mentioned, even the anchor had mentioned that Bangladesh is ruled by Jamaat Islami and Hizb ut-Tahrir. And I laughed at them, and they were so pissed off. When I laughed at them, I said, I don't buy these conspiracy theories of your of Jamaat and Hizb ut-Tahrir. I said, you do not know the background of Hizb ut-Tahrir. Hizb ut-Tahrir doesn't believe in a territory. It doesn't believe in a geographical map, the political map. They do not believe in constitution or parliament or election. They're totally on the extremist side, which they believe in one called Islamic Ummah, like the ISIS. And Jamaat Islami is the only is a political party which believes in election, constitution, blah blah blah. And of course, has of course an Islamic bias. That is, of course, had to yield. But no attacks. I tried to prove from the documents by the Hindu, Buddhist, Christian Unity Council, as well as the three other rights organizations called the Hindu Minority Watch and other documents to prove that what you are talking about is ethnic cleansing. Man, that is the interesting thing that I need your comment. I said I never knew since I was born. My knowledge of understanding ethnicity the Hindus doesn't fall into the ethnicity. So, you cannot say ethnic cleansing. When you say genocide, I said, look, I am a victim of genocide in 1971. I know what is genocide. The definition of genocide is already accepted definition. Whether you talk about UN or the International Criminal Court. So these are the words they have been using after 5th of August. Genocide. And the last thing that I would say, and then I would definitely seek the first thing first is, the argument is somewhere else. I was telling them that since 1972, when Bangladesh was born, there were series of, I would definitely will not admit, I would definitely admit that since 1971, the Hindus and other religious and even ethnic minorities in Chittagong Hill Tract, or the Garos and the other community are Santal has been persecuted, and they have been marginalized. They have been totally has been not been given an opportunity to come to the mainstream. So this they don't accept. They only talk about this few days. So they're compartmental. So they're not talking about the entire train. They're talking one compartment. That this is happening since Yunus. I am. And says you are justifying. Thank you.
No. I've seen Abu Barkat and I've seen Aroma Datta's research on this also. That, when you're looking at, persecution of Hindus, you will find it across parties. And it's not because of religious reasons. It is also for property reasons. If there are people who have property, people want to access it. So, it doesn't surprise me. What I have noticed in the Indian case is that there is great amount of illiteracy. As I said earlier, India continues to see Bangladesh as another Pakistan, which is completely not true. And that influences and shapes their thinking about the country. And therefore, they continue to present that propaganda internally for their internal domestic purposes within India. And therefore, it is not at all surprising to me that they want to portray Yunus as a stooge, that either the Jamaat or the military are going to be in charge. I've been telling I was on Barkha Dutt's Mojo Story and several other programs, Suna and Democracy Now! Here in America, also on PBS in the US. And I did make this point repeatedly again and again that, it is not in the interest of Bangladesh's military to take over the country, because if it were to do so, the military would lose the standing it has within the UN system to send peacekeepers. Because if you are coming from a military dictatorship, UN is not going to accept you. So the Bangladeshi army does not want to get involved in running the country. It has other priorities. These are the kind of nuances that are totally lost, and some of the most important think tank leaders and all of them, they just don't want to play it, because within India, it makes a lot of sense to say that, Hindus are in danger. And, there have been programs, I've seen it on Indian television networks where Bangladeshi Hindus are saying that we are safe. Your images of young Muslim men protecting Hindu temples in Bangladesh soon after the 5th of August. Because let's accept it. The fact is that there were some attacks on Hindus. It's not, but they were not attacked only because they were Hindus. They were probably also attacked because they were Awami League supporters, and Awami League had a very bad record in the last few years, right? I mean, they did win the elections fair and square twice in 1991 and then in 2008. But the elections after that were disputed. In that kind of a situation, it becomes very hard to prove that it is in a situation where the party is in a position to claim that it was fairly elected. And I think those are the kind of nuances that are totally lost in India. And it's impossible to make that point, because the narrative that the government wants to pretend and portray is that Hindus are in danger.
Thank you.
And it's playing elsewhere. In America, Ro Khanna, who's a politician from California, in Britain, Barry Gardner and Harry Blackman, they've been saying in Parliament the same thing. There is a report by I don't know if you've seen David Bergman's fine account a couple of days ago about what the all-party parliamentary group, which has come up and which is completely, I mean, it's bizarre what they're saying, because it's full of half-truths and exaggerations.
Yeah, and then the British government imposed the travel advisory to Bangladesh as well. So Mr. Ibrahim Siddique Khogan, any question?
Yeah, I have a very, very small question. Mr. Solil, thanks for coming here. I came from a border area, from close to Assam, and I live in New Jersey, where most of my neighbors are Indian. They're nicest people. They're friendly. We go to the watching cricket together. We enjoy the music together. Indian people are the nicest people in our life, our neighbors. But as a state, why India is trying to suppress us? Why India is trying to show their dadagiri all the time? What happened to the Indian intellectual who are not politically biased like Modi? What happened to the individual journalists from India who cannot stand in this point and tell, hey, propaganda is this, it is not always Hindu and Muslim, it is sometimes politically motivated, privileged versus underprivileged. So, Mr. Solil, you got to have a role to play and tell the true picture of Bangladesh and tell the true picture of Indian people too. Thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, whenever I'm asked by Indian media to speak, I have been speaking, and I've written mostly in the Guardian. I've written about this for Guardian, Foreign Policy, and Jerusalem Tribune. But I've not written in Indian papers because no one's asked me to. Because in India they say that I'm a supporter of Jamaat.
Okay, Mr.
I'm a supporter of democratic.
I'm a supporter of
India demands the largest democratic country of the world.
Okay, let him talk.
There are some journalists who stand.
Let him talk.
I supported Salman Rushdie, so I can't be a supporter of Jamaat, right?
That's understood.
Anyway, Siddique bhai, do you have any comment?
No, comment.
Okay, so
comment is very common.
No, I have a question. I have a question.
Okay.
If I may ask. Okay, so my question is, since as you mentioned that the India's government always considered the Bangladesh is another Pakistan. What is the reason? Because India helped Bangladesh to get independence, Bangladesh is absolutely a secular country, and there is no Islamist government in Bangladesh. Many times Bangladesh have an election, there is no Islamic party even win in the election. They have very marginalized. There is a very percentage was I think about 5% or 3% vote they gain. Why India consider Bangladesh as another Pakistan?
I wish I knew, honestly, because even in Pakistan, let's look at the voting. Jamaat doesn't get a lot of votes, right?
Yes.
And even in Bangladesh, I mean, when I was writing about it in July and August, I noticed that Jamaat has never got more than 12% of the vote. Never.
10%.
Okay? I mean, and even if you have an open elections tomorrow, it will not get more than 20% of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so only 1 out of 5 Bangladeshis are what one might call fundamentalist Muslim, which is fine. I mean, 1 out of 5 Hindus are also fundamentalist Hindus, so
Yeah.
in India. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. But when you see images of Hifazat Islam or, the marches that take place, there is this perception that, there is going to be a major attack and there is going to be attack on Hindu properties and so on. And then when, unfortunately, some temples do get attacked and, when people are moving, because, I mean, every time I say something on social media that Bangladesh is not Pakistan, I get a message from somebody who is Hindu and Bengali from India who says, but my family was in Bangladesh and they've just come here and they can't go back safely. And I can't argue with that. I have to assume that they are true. And I can also assume that they are scared. I mean, I'm invited to a wedding in Bangladesh in December this year. And my family in India is saying, don't go to Bangladesh. It's not safe. I think it is safe. I'm planning to come. But they are saying that don't go. So, I mean, there is this perception that has been created in India that it has become an extremely volatile situation.
And also in Bangladesh, about 10% are minorities, including the Hindus.
Chakmas, Buddhists, Santals, you mentioned Khasis and Garos, and I mean, to say that, Bangladesh is only Muslim majority, yes, it is Muslim majority, but there are lots of other, I mean Christian Bangladeshis, right? I mean, I've written about them in my book.
Yeah, so in 10%, about 25%, governmental job has been distributed by among the Hindus and others. If you compare to India, India has about, I think about 17 crore of Muslims, and only 1% Muslim minority is there. They are getting the governmental job. So compare both, how Bangladesh is, behaving with the other minorities. Do you have any comment?
I mean, it's a very hard argument to make, and I will not, you will always get exceptions.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make a categorical statement here, but I do think that the average Hindu is safer in Bangladesh than the average Muslim in India.
Thanks.
I want to add
what Rashid Alvi said last week. Rashid Alvi is a Congress MP, and exactly what he said. Muslims in India are less safer than Hindus in Bangladesh. I have a question for you.
I do think so. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Since you're a historian, you delve.
I'm a journalist. I'm not a historian.
Well, no, but when I read your book about 1971, clearly you have a sense of history in your mind. Most Indians believe that Bangladesh is a gift from India. I've spoken to friends in India.
Yeah.
They all believe that Bangladesh is there only because of India's sacrifice, India's contribution. It's a gift from India. I read yesterday, for example.
But it's an insult to Bangladesh to say that. Honestly.
Absolutely.
When my book came out, I was at the Jaipur Literature Festival and I was interviewed by, I can't remember the name of the person, but he was from the Indian Army and he's a writer. And he was part of the Bangladesh war. So, I mean, he obviously was a very courageous man who helped Bangladesh become free. So we have to salute that. But he said, this is how he began the story. So Salil, tell us the story. Pakistan went, killed a lot of people, India went, and in 2 weeks the war was over. Is that what happened? I said, no, you're missing the 9 months before that.
Exactly.
And I said, in those 9 months, hundreds of thousands of people died. I don't know the number. I don't want to get into the 3 million versus 300,000 controversy. It's for Bangladeshis to sort out. But a lot of people died, a lot of women were raped, and that is a reality that cannot be. And the brunt was borne by Bangladeshis.
Absolutely.
Yes, India helped. India helped through weapons, by training, by supporting them, by sending boats in, by even sending spies in and soldiers in, and at the right time sending the troops in. So I'm not minimizing India's role, but the brunt was borne by Bangladeshis. And until India recognizes and reckons with that, India is undermining and insulting Bangladesh.
Now let's think about how we move forward. How do we move forward? What would be your prescription?
Hassan bhai, can I add with your question? Okay, so if I ask you the Hassan, adding the Hassan bhai question, which is how the relation could be improved between two countries, but India has a biggest role because it's a big country and the big power in that region. They have to play a vital role, big role. So what would be the Indian role? What should be the Indian role to improve the relation between two countries?
I think, it's an old story that, you can either gain influence with your neighbors by being kind and nice or by throwing your weight around. And the current government likes to throw its weight around in India. Now, I'm not sure whether the next government, if and when there is one, will necessarily. But in the early days of Rajiv Gandhi's rule, where he came to power in 84, between 84 to 87, after 87 his power waned. But in the first 3 years, he was very generous, very kind, and he stooped, India has to stoop to conquer, basically. Now, and then you can get a lot of friendship. Why is there no visa? India, South Asia should be like Europe, right? We should all be able to go to each other's countries without a visa. We should be able to walk across the borders. And that isn't happening. There should be a Schengen-like system. I lived in Britain for 20 years, and it was amazing how easy it was to go from one country to another. Last week, I was in one day I went from Norway to Denmark to Geneva. And no one stopped me at any stage. I just walked through. Why can't it be the same way? Why can't you go from Karachi to Dhaka that way within a day? What's the harm with it? But to do that, you need to have trust in people-to-people context and not let the politicians and the generals determine the policies. Now, it's very easy for us to say this because, none of us has power. None of us is going to run for elections. None of us is going to be in office. And therefore, whatever we say is going to be meaningless here. But that's the only way forward.
Thank you. Salim bhai?
Okay, I want to add the relationship with Bangladesh and India in the recent time is very precarious. Number one, India has totally stopped visa, issuance of visa for the Bangladesh nationals to visiting India, and that is one of the reasons. There are two more things that has to be added. First of all, the reason that visa has been stopped, or they have stopped issuing visa, that has one of the reasons that the buses from Dhaka to Kolkata, Dhaka to Agartala, and the train service from Dhaka to Siliguri to Kolkata has all stopped. All the major flights from either Indian and Bangladeshi private airlines, they have slashed their flights to 1/3, and even now they are thinking of reducing further more because they don't have passengers. And I'm not talking about who else are going. Only few are going. And another I was not expecting. Bangladesh is still importing potatoes, onion, eggs for your morning breakfast, and diesel and power from India. That has not been stopped. There is no bargain about that. But India has totally stopped exports from Bangladesh, totally. And that has been claimed by Ambassador Humayun Kabir in an interview in Potobalo. And even yesterday, Indian media, like in Assam, they have totally blocked the road linking the the trucking company who are plying with all the whatever they are importing from India, that has been blocked. So obviously you can understand this relationship with Dhaka and Delhi is not just something that you are talking about. I mean, there is a morning cup of tea. That it's not so easy to repair this relationship right now. They have to open the border. They have to open the people to people, as you have said. But I mean, how do you go about it without visa, without trade, and many other things? I mean, India has signed several transit with Bangladesh, and all the transit has stopped because nothing is coming from India, nothing is going from Bangladesh. Like export to Nepal, for example, the trucks from Bangladesh, the goods are being transported overland to Nepal. I mean, this was agreed. The train used to go from Dhaka to Siliguri, then the rest, the goods was transported to wherever, even in Nepal. So everything has stopped. So you can understand the situation is not as good as that we hear from others.
Yeah.
Mr.
It's terrible. I mean, it is terrible, and it is exactly where India is exerting its power, and it's behaving like a regional bully.
Right. So, okay. So, as you know, Professor Muhammad Yunus, who is a Nobel laureate, the head of the interim government, and being a journalist, being an expert on South Asian affairs, how do you evaluate his, the way he's ruling the country?
It's tough to tell because, when he, someone in his council of advisors is actually a friend of mine, Rizwana, who has worked. I mean, Rizwana is an amazing woman. She has done superb work for bricklayers and shipbreakers and environment. She's won the Goldman Prize. So I was thrilled when, she was named in the cabinet, because I thought if people like Rizwana Hassan are in the cabinet, then it can only be a good thing. But I am disappointed, because I think what they could have done is to continue with that and built on the students as their support rather than the political parties, and announce a very clear path for elections, that the elections will be held in 6 months or 2 years. Give a path, give a clear sign, because it's very easy for people to ridicule the current government by saying that it is not a representative government, because it is not. It is an appointed government, and it doesn't do Bangladesh any favors to have a government which is not run by people who are elected. And elections are important, and the sooner the elections are held, the better, because there was a lot of enthusiasm for Yunus, and there's a lot of regard for Yunus. People do like Grameen. But if more and more time passes, then people will start ascribing to the caretaker government, or whatever you call the current government, with sins. And if those are ascribed to the government, it's going to hurt them later, and it's going to make it harder for a new kind of, when I was writing my book, everybody in Dhaka said, we want a -2 solution. And I said, what is a -2 solution? They said, we don't want Awami League, we don't want BNP, we want something else. Now, that's a wonderful idea. I mean, one should always have choice in democracies. But if that doesn't happen, then we will be back to the twiddledum and tweedledee situation.
So, as you know, the Bangladesh young generation, they're coming out. They are the people who are handling the whole country, and the triple the Awami League government as well. What is your opinion about the way they emerge in the current affairs and the politics, the young generation in Bangladesh?
So I was very inspired by them, and when they started to say, Tumi Rajakar, Ami Rajakar, the slogan that they came up with, and the way they challenged Awami League, and the fact that they said that we are against quotas only for the freedom fighters and not against the disabled, not against women, not against minorities. There was a lot to admire about them. But my suspicion and my fear, and I've not looked at the very recent incident since then, but is that view is getting sidelined now, and the traditional politicians from BNP, the cases being withdrawn against Tariq, and Tariq might even return to Bangladesh and all that. that means we are back to square one. And
Square
that's
one.
Yeah.
Siddiq bhai, okay, go ahead. Siddiq
No,
bhai, okay.
I was trying to add.
Unmute your sound.
Mr.
Siddiq bhai,
Tripathi.
you want to talk?
Mr. Tripathi, I would definitely like to add. I mean, and personally, I believe, like me, there are many others who also had mentioned that the Professor Yunus has made a major mistake. I would not use the word debacle. It's a major mistake. My mistake is getting these older people of the X generation. X means who are rejected by the society. They have been included in the advisory council. I'm talking about he should have taken all the advisors should be from the students who had revolted, who were leaders in the revolt. I mean, just to give us very small example, there are two advisors from the students group. You will be I will not try to impress you, but those two ministries are functioning the best according to the reporters who are covering those ministries or those special. I have been told time and again, no problem had emerged from those two ministries. And if you if you listen to Professor Yunus giving an interview to Bonik Bartha, to the editor of the Bonik Bartha, where he said, he admitted that the advisors every day is telling him that please let me go. I don't want to be in the council. Please excuse me. And that is the problem with the elderly people. They cannot manage. They don't understand what they want to do. The bureaucrats are not listening to them. That is their argument, which has not been surfaced. But the students never mentioned that the bureaucrats or officials are not listening to them. Okay. What is your comment?
No, I mean, I don't know it
Siddiq bhai, please unmute your sound.
Yeah, no, I don't know it in as much detail as you do because I've not been to Bangladesh for a very, very long time. I've only seen it from a distance. But I essentially agree with you that, I mean, it's the younger lot who need to take charge. And it takes us back to the -2 situation. That -2 situation was not so much about just getting rid of the two women. -2 situation was also to turn the new leaf and move to a new kind of Bangladesh with a new kind of younger leadership that can, and it's an incredibly rich country with people and their talents. So there's no fundamental reason why it cannot happen. So I'm not surprised when you tell me that the two ministries which are doing well are the ones that are run by students. I would imagine that Rizwana would do a very good job if she's only working on environment.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Nazmul Hasan and Siddiq bhai. Any comment?
Just only one thing I want to say. Thank you. I didn't know about him very much, but I must admit that his prescription is very clear that there is right now, in reality, there is no government in Bangladesh. So there is no relationship between Bangladesh and India. So we need a democratically elected government. Then we will have a clear-cut relationship between Bangladesh and India. Number two, we said, and he said very correctly, whatever I said, whatever Hassan Bhai said, we cannot do anything. The people of Bangladesh will make the decision how the country will run. It's not me, it's not you, it's not nobody. So, to get that, you should have, because you forcefully pushed a democratic government, is not there. So, the main thing is not that he is doing with his supporter, who is it, cabinet, whatever you call it. They cannot do anything because they don't have any connection with the people. They are all rich people. They are all educated people. They are all like Nobel laureate. They cannot do anything for the common people of any country in the whole world. So that is the saddest part of people of Bangladesh.
Thank you so much.
The people of Bangladesh are suffering for that. So what I am trying to say, finally, I thank you all. I thank you for your comments that there is the only prescription is right now, go for an election, have a fair election, and the elected government will make all the changes it needed.
Thank
There's
you.
no any changes needed because the country is already 53 years old country.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much.
It had already everything laid out. The country was developing, but now it's going downwards. So best thing is just have an
After the
election
looting,
as soon as
after
possible.
the loot
Thank-
and the bank loot and the money laundering, the country is still good.
Thank you.
What to say? Dr. Siddiq?
Siddiq bhai, what is your comment? The relationship between India and Bangladesh now, the situation is now, what do you think? Why it is happening?
You need a government.
Because Awamu League is not in the power?
Eventually,
You need a no, I'm not saying that.
Eventually,
You need a
we are
government
not-
to
we
talk
are
with
not-
Bangladesh, to talk in India.
Okay. All right.
Please.
Cannot have a,
Thank you.
have a-
Now we are not going. Okay. আমার মনে হয় নাজমুল হাসান সাহেব একটু কথা বলবেন।
I was listening to everybody. I have only two comments about, Sorel explained is very good, very well explained. But one thing I want to say that Selim Samad said that all students should, their ministries are performing well. So one reason I believe is that they are so virgin in the Bangladeshi politics. That's why. Because Bangladeshi politics is so corrupted, and so they are still virgin in that political atmosphere. So that's why their ministries are running good. That's what my belief. And second thing, I agree with Dr. Siddiq that Bangladesh should have an elected government as soon as possible. This government, which is not elected but selected, will not have that much energy and acceptance as it moves around too long. So I think this government should have an election, a viable and all party participation election. If somebody have some corruption there, they should be tried. If somebody was involved in money laundering, someone, regardless of their party affiliation, they should be put on trial. But Bangladesh should have an election as soon as possible, realistically possible.
Thank you. Thanks. I think we have to wrap up. So, Hassan bhai, if you have any other thing you want to include, 30
One
seconds.
very quick comment, Sandeep, thank you very much. In defense of India, this is what I would say, putting my devil's advocate hat. There have been very, how should I put it, not very diplomatic comments from Bangladesh leaders either. Some of our leaders have extremely incendiary comments. Some of the young leaders have even proposed that we need to carve India. Those comments are completely uncalled for. I've seen Indian flag being trampled at Dhaka University and elsewhere. That's also completely uncalled for. I think we need from our side, from the government side, to tamp it down, to tone it down. What was your prescription for India? I give the same to Bangladesh. Our leaders especially need
Hassan
temper it.
bhai rightly said one thing, but as you people discussed about the relationship between United States and Canada, the visa free states, why should not Bangladesh have some kind of, Bangladesh and India have relationship like US and Canada? But the only thing আমার যেটা মনে হয়, আমি যেটা ফিল করি সেটা হচ্ছে Professor Yunus Saheb, when he took over the government of Bangladesh as he came from Geneva, the first few days he's talking about Indian relationship with India was toxic somehow, and that made India very angry, even though they haven't shown it. But they gradually are showing their anger in different perspectives. And I think the Hassan Bhai rightfully said that the ministers of Bangladesh interim government especially should avoid toxic languages. They're defending Bangladesh or defending against Indian what is called attitude towards Bangladesh. I think Bangladesh should avoid toxicity.
Bangladesh.
At the same time, just one last comment. At the same time, the refusal by Indian government to meet with Bangladeshi leaders at the UN, for example, was terrible. We repeatedly asked Modi and Modi's reps to come to New York and have a chat with Yunus. They even didn't respond initially. That was terrible. India, being the superpower of the region, should have responded positively to our invitation. They didn't. And I think that is extremely undiplomatic.
Yeah, so
It was childish and churlish.
There you go.
Yeah.
But
so-
you know, one thing, I mean, I've worked for a long time on human rights, and one thing is that I'm very, very glad that people who were kept in, who had disappeared and who were kept in these closed homes
Secret prison.
were released. Yeah, the secret prisons. That's very good. But I also don't like the fact that 𝐒𝐻𝐢𝐴𝑅 Kabir is being tried for, the way he is being tried. Because, I mean, to call him as a genocide enabler is utterly bizarre.
Nonsense.
And the case has to be dropped. And those kinds of things have to stop. Because Bangladesh has to put out the message very clearly that it is going to stand for human rights and civil liberties. Because that will give it the kind of recognition and credibility in the international community from people who wish Bangladesh well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think, as you mentioned, that if when you are side by side, true country, then you have to embrace each other. If you show me your cold shoulder, then how I can go? How I can embrace you? How I can give you a hug? So I think India as a big country, their responsibility is more than any other country in the near their Indian neighbor.
But don't worry. As Salim Bhai said, our young leaders will conquer India and will not have any problem.
No, there is.
I did not say that. Mr. Siddiq, don't put your words into my mouth.
No, you said.
I did not say they will conquer.
Okay, so we are not talking. We are not.
You are lying.
You
You are
said
putting your words into my
all
mouth.
should be
We are-
students by the government.
Okay,
You said
Salim
that.
No,
bhai.
I didn't say anything.
Ola Omili coming
You
back.
You have to listen to what I said. Don't put your words into my mouth.
No. You said.
Correct?
No.
Yes.
All right.
You don't know
Okay.
two ministries, how many people got money from two ministries.
All
There are
right.
a lot of things happening.
Okay,
There are a
Siddiq
lot
bhai,
of things
we'll
happening.
discuss
The
about-
people of
Siddiq-
Bangladesh will decide.
Siddiq bhai, we'll
What
discuss
I am
about it
saying,
in
if
another
Bangladesh,
event.
The people of Bangladesh will decide what should
Okay.
they do. It's up to the people of Bangladesh.
We are going to decide.
To nobody.
We will discuss about later.
But
No
Siddiq
problem.
bhai,
No problem.
Siddiq bhai, for last 15 years, one after one election happened. And that time, the people could not come forward to put their vote. But thank you. After all this thing, you guys realized that. So you are a true leader. Now you are down to earth and asking for people's support. Thank you, Siddiq Rahman.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Salil Tripathi. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And I think Bangladesh and Indian descent, who we are, we don't belong any political, party.
Yeah,
or,
that's right. The people
we
of
should- we
Bangladesh will
should-
decide and people of India will decide.
we should discuss about, and then we can
how they will respect each other.
we can help to create the people opinion, how these areas people can be together, love each other beside of the hates each other. Thank you for your time. Anything, the last question I have, so we can conclude the session, which is what do you think about the bitterness and how we can be very close, united like a brotherly together, two nations?
You need an elected government.
Okay, let him talk.
Without an elected government, it's nothing going to happen.
I'm asking Mr. Salil Tripathi the question.
I mean, this sounds like a very emotional response from me,
Yeah.
but frankly, we have to build on the cultural ties because, the cultural ties are extremely strong. And I don't want to only talk about Tagore, but cricket and, Satyajit Ray and, Nazrul Islam and all
Yes.
that. We have to build on that because, I get goosebumps when I'm in Bangladesh. When I go there, I feel I'm on home territory.
Right.
And many Indians would also feel the same way. And I think Bangladeshis feel the same way when they are in India. And we have to build on that people-to-people contacts. We have to sing each other's songs. We have to read each other's poetry and literature and, celebrate each other as people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
That's very good comment.
Yeah.
Very good comment.
Thank you, Mr. Salil. Thank you, Hassan Bhai, apnake. Thank you, Salim Samad from Bangladesh. Thank you, Nazmul Hassan, and thank you, Dr. Siddiq Rahman. Thank you, Ibrahim Chaudhry Khokon. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Thank you so much. দর্শক আজকে এ পর্যন্তই, আগামীকাল আবার দেখা হবে। সবাই ভালো থাকবেন। খোদা হাফেজ।
you.